Hello everyone. In this video I am going to talk about 5 best aquarium plants for shrimp. So let's get started. The first plant in our list is Java moss. Java moss is a very popular aquarium plant and it is commonly used in aquascaping. It is very hardy plant and can tolerate a wide range of water parameters, which makes it ideal for beginners. It is a very good plant for nano shrimp tank because it grows very dense and provides a lot of hiding places to shrimp. Now let's talk about the light requirements of Java moss. Java moss can survive in almost any lighting condition. You can keep it in low lighting condition, but then it will grow lankier. On the other hand, when you keep it under strong lighting, it will grow denser and compact, but it can also cause algae growth on this plant. So ideally you should provide it anywhere between 2 to 3 watts of light per gallon. So what's the best place to keep Java moss in nano shrimp tank? As mentioned earlier, Java moss is commonly used in aquascaping. This is because you can keep it in a variety of different ways in your tank. You can just let it float in your tank, or you can also tie it to any ornament like driftwood or rock and then put it inside your tank. You can also use it as a carpet plant. So it really comes down to what aesthetics you are looking for. Now let's talk about the substrate requirements of Java moss. Java moss doesn't have true roots. Instead it has rhizomes. It gets attached to other things like rock and driftwood through these rhizomes. So substrate is not necessary for keeping Java moss in your tank. You can just let it float in the tank, or you can tie it to any ornament in your tank like driftwood or rock. Also you can use it as a carpet plant. Now let's talk about the fertilization requirements of Java moss. Java moss is a very hardy plant and can grow without any fertilizers. In fact, this is the thing that makes it ideal plant for shrimps, because some fertilizers contain copper in high quantity, which can be harmful for shrimp. Now let's talk about the ideal water parameters for Java moss. As mentioned earlier, Java moss can tolerate a wide range of water parameters. It can tolerate temperature as low as 59 degree Fahrenheit to up to 86 degree Fahrenheit. Its pH tolerance range is between 5 to 8 and it does well in soft water. Now let's talk about the second plant in our list. The second plant in our list is Sylvester Tank. It is also a very easy to care for plant and it is relatively undemanding, which makes it an ideal choice for beginners. This plant grows dense like Java moss and its growth rate is slow, which makes it ideal for nano shrimp tanks. It provides a lot of hiding places for shrimp and baby shrimp. It also creates very good feeding ground for baby shrimp. This plant also improves the overall water quality of the tank by removing harmful toxins and heavy metals from the water. Also, it helps to oxygenate the tank. Now let's talk about the light requirements for sub-vessel tank. Sub-vessel tank requires very strong lighting. It can do well in low to moderate lighting conditions as well, but ideally you should keep it under strong lighting conditions for its optimum growth. How to keep sub-vessel tank in a nano shrimp tank? The simplest way is to just let it float in your aquarium. You can also attach it to any ornament in your aquarium like driftwood or rock and then put it inside the aquarium. Now let's talk about the substrate requirements for sub-vessel tank. Like Java moss, sub-vessel tank also doesn't have true roots, so it doesn't actually require any substrate for keeping in the aquarium. You can just simply let it float in the tank, or you can also tie it to any ornament like driftwood or rock and then put it inside the aquarium. Now let's talk about the ideal water parameters for sub-vessel tank. The ideal temperature for the proper growth of sub-vessel tank is between 68 to 73 degree Fahrenheit. Its pH tolerance range is between 6 to 8 and it does well in soft water. Now let's talk about the fertilization requirements for this plant. Sub-vessel tank doesn't require any fertilizers for its growth, which makes it ideal for shrimp tank because some fertilizers contain copper in excess quantity that can potentially harm the shrimp. Now let's talk about the third plant in our list. The third plant in our list is water lettuce. Water lettuce is a popular floating plant in the aquarium hobby. This plant can be challenging to grow in a home aquarium because it requires a lot of humidity to grow. But if you provide it ideal conditions, then it can grow very fast and very large, and it can easily take over your tank. This plant is ideal choice for shrimp because it provides a lot of hiding places to the shrimp, which helps to reduce stress. Now let's talk about the light requirements for water lettuce. Ideally, you should provide moderate lighting conditions to water lettuce. So you should provide it light anywhere between 3 to 4 watts per gallon. Now let's talk about how you can keep water lettuce in a shrimp tank. As water lettuce is a floating aquarium plant, you should let it float on the surface of the water of your aquarium. Now let's talk about substrate requirements for water lettuce. As water lettuce is a floating plant, it doesn't really require any substrate for keeping in the aquarium. You just have to let it float in your aquarium. Now let's talk about the ideal water parameters for this plant. The ideal temperature for the proper growth of water lettuce is between 70 to 80 degree Fahrenheit, and its pH tolerance range is between 6.5 to 7.2, and it does well in soft to moderately hard water. Now let's talk about the fertilization requirements for this plant. This plant also doesn't require any fertilizers for its growth, which again makes it a very good plant for shrimp tank because fertilizers usually contain copper that can potentially harm the shrimps in your tank. Now let's move to the next plant in the list. So the next plant in our list is red root floater. It is also a fast growing floating plant. This plant is very hardy, which makes it an ideal choice for beginners. This plant also provides a lot of hiding places to the shrimps, which makes it an ideal plant for the shrimp tank. This plant does well in open top tanks because it cannot tolerate too much humidity or moisture. Too much humidity or moisture can rot this plant. Also, you should avoid keeping this plant in your tank if it has high level of surface agitation. Now let's talk about light requirements for red root floaters. Red root floaters can do well in almost any lighting conditions, whether that is low or high. But to get its red coloration, you should keep it under high lighting conditions. Now how you can keep red root floater in your shrimp tank? As the red root floater is a floating aquarium plant, you should just let it float on the surface of the water of your tank. Now let's talk about the fertilization requirements for this plant. Red root floaters can do well without any fertilizers, and it doesn't really require any additional CO2 supplementation. But if you provide it CO2 supplementation, then it will definitely benefit from it and grow faster. The CO2 supplementation especially will help it for its red coloration. Now what are the ideal water parameters for this plant? So the ideal temperature for the proper growth of red root floater is between 70 to 80 degree Fahrenheit, and its pH tolerance range is between 6.5 to 7.5. Now let's move to the last plant in our list, which is duckweed. Duckweed is another fast growing floating aquarium plant. This plant is very hardy and undemanding, which makes it ideal for beginners. Aquarists have mixed opinion about this plant. Some consider it a rampant pest, and other considers it a very good plant to improve the overall water quality. The thing is, this plant can grow very fast and it can easily take over your tank. That can result in low oxygen level and low light in the aquarium. So if you are going to keep this plant in your aquarium, then you should always keep an eye on this plant and regularly trim it. If you keep this plant in control, then this plant can work as a very good water purifier for your aquarium. Now what are the light requirements for this plant? Duckweed is a very undemanding plant, but it does require a good amount of light for its proper and fast growth. So you should provide it anywhere between 3 to 4 watts of light per gallon at least. So how you can keep duckweed in a shrimp tank? Duckweed is a floating plant, so you should just let it float on the surface of the water of your aquarium. Now let's talk about the ideal water parameters for duckweed. Duckweed can tolerate a wide range of water parameters. That being said, the ideal temperature for this plant is between 42 degree Fahrenheit to up to 91 degree Fahrenheit. So you can easily keep it in almost any aquarium, whether that is cold water or warm water aquarium. Its pH tolerance range is between 5 to 9. As duckweed is a floating aquarium plant, it doesn't require any substrate, and also duckweed doesn't really require any fertilizers to grow. it can totally do fine without any fertilization. So these are the best 5 aquarium plants for shrimp tank. If you want to know 4 more aquarium plants for shrimp tank, then you should definitely check out my article. I have written an in-depth article that actually contains 9 aquarium plants for shrimp tank. You can check out that article. I have provided the link in the description box below. Thank you so much.